Howdy folks, welcome back to my World of Tanks replays with the mighty Jingles. And I know what you're thinking. You're all thinking, oh Jingles, for God's sake, will you stop going on about the Lorraine? We get it, you like the Lorraine, we understand. Whoa, hold on, relax. That is not the Lorraine 40T. That, friends and neighbours, and you can be forgiven for mistaking the two, is the AMX50 100. I finally unlocked it. It does look a lot like the Lorraine. I mean, there's the 5100, and there's the Lorraine. At a distance, you could definitely be forgiven for confusing the two. Now, and there's a good reason for that, because it basically is the Lorraine, except it's slower, easier to hit, and doesn't perform as well. So you might very well ask yourself, well, if that's the case, why did you get it? And I do find myself asking that question. I held off getting this thing for a long time. I've had the AMX50 the Tier 7 French heavy tank, this being the Tier 8, for a long while, and I did like the M4 It wasn't a fantastic tank, but I did quite well with it. And then I had a look at what was coming next, this thing, and I thought to myself, it looks just like the Lorraine. And I had a look at the stats, and yeah, it pretty much is the Lorraine, just not as fast, not as manoeuvrable, and easier to hit. And I asked myself that very question, well, why bother getting it? And well, the reason why you bother getting the AMX50 100 is so you can get the AMX50 120, which is great, and the AMX50B, which is fantastic. I played one of these on the test server. This is one of the most fun tanks I've ever played. But to get to these two great tanks, you have to go through this. And I know people say, there's a turkey in every tank line. You got the German medium tank lines, and where is it? There we go, the 3001P, one of the worst grinds in the game. But the French line seems to have turkeys all over the place. I mean, the AMX38, the AMX40, practically everything, all the way up to the AMX M445. The ARL 44 sucks, the BDRG1B sucks, the B1 sucks, the D2, they all suck. This isn't bad. This one, well, I'm not going to say it sucks. It's not bad. These two are great, but there's a hell of a lot of suffering you have to go through to get to them. But it's not a bad tank. It just has, I have concerns about it. So we'll get on to the tank itself. So yeah, it looks a lot like the Lorraine, and well, there's a very good reason for that, because if you go to the research tree for the AMX50 100, if you already have the if you already have the Lorraine fully researched, well, that gun is unlocked, that gun is unlocked, that radio is unlocked, that engine's unlocked. And if you have elited the AMX M4 or more specifically researched that engine, then when you roll into the garage in the AMX50 100, that engine's unlocked as well. So basically, as soon as I got this thing, it was almost elite. The only thing it didn't have was that suspension. Now this is a good thing about the 5100. It has a very generous load limit with the stock suspension. I think it comes up to exactly 50 tons. And mounting that, and that on this thing with the stock suspension brings the weight up to, I think, 49.7 tons. In fact, no, I think it was 49.93 tons. You had about 30 kilograms spare, but you could quite happily unlock this thing if you've already researched the Lorraine and fully upgraded your AMX M445 before you get this. You could unlock this thing, buy it, plonk it down in your garage, stick the 100mm gun on it, stick the Maybach engine on it, stick the top radio on it, and be ready to go. However, that's all you can fit. Right? You cannot fit. There doesn't even have spare weight capacity to fit a camouflage net. But that's not bad. There is really no stock grind on this thing. However, more than any other tank I have ever come across, This thing requires an enhanced gun lane drive and a vertical stabilizer, and it would really benefit from improved ventilation as well, and a wet ammo rack. And CO2 fuel tanks. There just aren't enough slots to mount everything this tank needs. I'm not saying stuff that's nice to have. These are things that this tank needs, and I'll explain why. So, Tier 8 heavy tanks. Germans have got the 4502, the Tiger II, the Russians have the IS-3, the Americans have the T-32, and the French have this, the AMX50 100. It's a French heavy tank. Regardless of the fact that it is a heavy tank, the important thing here is it's a French tank. So it has the lowest health, it has the worst armour by far, but it has the most powerful engine and the best engine to weight ratio, so it is quite fast. 51 kilometers per hour. It's a fast heavy tank. The traverse speed is very, very, very good. I'm pretty sure, yeah, it has the best traverse speed, it has the best top speed. The turret traverse is very fast as well. However, anybody who's driven the E50 in particular will understand what I mean when I talk about inertia and momentum. And for those of you listening to this for whom English is not your first language, an object that is moving forward wants to keep moving forward. And when you're driving the E50, one of the things that makes it such a good ramming vehicle is that it weighs over 50 tons and it can do 60 kilometers per hour. So that's a lot of mass moving forward very quickly, and it doesn't like stopping in a hurry. You get that in this as well. It's a 50-ton tank, and it's got a very powerful engine, and it really does not like slowing down and stopping in a hurry, which is a similar problem that you get in the E50. Now, in the E50, that's not really a massive problem, but it kind of is in this, because this thing is definitely a heavy tank, despite the fact that it has hardly any health and no armour whatsoever. And despite the fact that it's pretty much just a slightly beefed up and slower version of the Lorraine. Because the Lorraine's big advantage is its speed and manoeuvrability. That's how it survives. It just doesn't get hit. And because it's a medium tank, it doesn't have, and it weighs less. It's 39, nearly 40 tons. It doesn't have the same sense of inertia and momentum that the 5100 does. Now, when you get this thing into close combat, which is the only way it's ever going to kill anything, because as mentioned in the Lorraine and Batchat and 1390 videos, these French guns are useless at sniping. You're going to have problems with this thing. And the reason for that is because the tank kind of... how can I put this? Its biggest defense, like the Lorraine, is the fact that it's fast. You're going to die in 3 shots from most things that shoot at you in this thing, and they are going to penetrate, and they are going to do damage. The IS-3 can kill you in 3 shots, an ISU-152 can kill you in 2 shots, a T-30 can kill you in 2 shots, a Jag Tiger will kill you in 3 shots. You cannot afford to get hit in this thing. Unfortunately, you're going to get hit a lot in this thing, because for a number of reasons. One, you're a heavy tank. You're one of the guys that your team relies on to lead the assault. You're not expected to lead assaults in a Lorraine because you're a medium tank. You will be expected to lead assaults in this thing because you're using up one of your team's tier 8 heavy tank slots, and this thing cannot lead assaults. It dies in 3 hits from anything, and that's a huge problem. Moving on, its only defense, as I've already said, is its speed and manoeuvrability. But that kind of works against it, because while it's moving and manoeuvring, it couldn't hit the side of a barn from the inside. It is the most ridiculously inaccurate, even at point blank range, tank that I've ever played. You watch anybody's AMX 1390 videos, and they will always tell you never fire that gun when you're on the move. You'll zip behind somebody, stop, aim, and then fire. Otherwise, it'll just miss. And it's exactly the same in this. But if you stop in this thing, you're dead meat. It's just so counterintuitive. You have to keep moving in this thing to survive. It's just, there's no two ways about it. You cannot trade shots with other tanks in this thing. It's a French tank. It's got no armor. It's got no health. If you start blazing away at another tank, letting him shoot back at you, you're going to die. So you cannot stop when you're moving in this thing and expect to live, unless you're ganging up on somebody 3-1. At which point, well, what's the point? You can't go anywhere without friends in this, and sadly that's true. But if you do keep moving, you're not going to hit the guy that you're shooting at. Or you are going to hit, but it's going to bounce because you couldn't aim in time. And this thing has real problems aiming and hitting what it's shooting at, if it's moving. The aiming circle is absolutely huge. 0.36 accuracy, again, it's one of those things on paper. You look at the stats of the gun. Let's pull it up. Good penetration. That is the best penetration of the Tier 8 medium heavy tank guns. Damage, well, it's the worst damage of the Tier 8 heavy tank guns, but that's okay. It's got a 6-shot autoloader clip. It can fire those shots very quickly. Well, it can, but if you fire those shots as quickly as the gun loads, most of them are going to miss, or they're not going to penetrate because they're not hitting the weak spots. And you do have to aim for weak spots with this gun, unless you're bullying lower tier medium and light tanks. It's that 3-second aiming time. Because you have to keep moving in this thing, and because you have to keep turning the turret, that aiming circle never settles down. It's huge. And because of that, this thing bounces and misses like you wouldn't believe. In order to accurately hit and penetrate enemy heavies with this gun, you need to stop, and you need to aim. And it takes 3 seconds to do that. More if you've been turning the turret. And then you're a dead tank, because whatever's shooting at you only has to hit you 3 times. And that's what's really frustrating about this thing. It's a heavy tank, but you can't play it like a heavy tank, because it's not really a heavy tank. It's just a slower, easier to hit Lorraine with a gun that doesn't perform as well in close combat. But you're still using a heavy tank slot, so your team expects and needs you to play like a heavy. But if you try that, you die. And that is kind of unfortunate. And it makes it very frustrating to play this thing, because you don't want to be a burden to your team. And this thing, like the Lorraine, can be very dangerous. If you've got another heavy tank taking the fire, you can zip in around the flank of whatever's being attacked and pummel them from the side, as long as he's not shooting at you. Well, that's what the Lorraine does. This is a heavy tank. You're the one that is supposed to be taking the fire from the enemy heavies, so that the Lorraines on the team and the medium tanks on the team can zip around the flanks and shoot at them. But if you try doing that in this thing, you're a dead man. And it gets worse. Now, I can't prove this. This is purely going from empirical evidence. This is just my own experience. But if you look at all of the French medium and light tanks, AMX 1390, crew of 3, 1375, crew of 3, 12T, crew of 3, Batchat, crew of 3, Lorraine, crew of 3. And if you look closer at that crew, you will find that in every case, the commander is also the radio operator. The gunner is also the loader. The driver is usually just the driver. Now that means that the consequences of getting the crew killed in any of the French light and medium tanks is twice as bad as for a crewman of any other nation. Because if your gunner gets killed, well, you just lost your loader as well. And this is an autoloader. And that thing, even on a good day, here we go, get the correct tank. That thing, even on a good day, takes 48 seconds to reload. And this is another problem you have. 48-second reload on a tank that could potentially be the top dog for your team is disastrous. That amount of reload time has no place in this game on a heavy tank. It just does not work. You can get away with that in a 1390, you can get away with it in a Lorraine, you can get away with it in a Batchat, because you're not expected in these tanks to be going toe-to-toe with the enemy and keeping them occupied. You are damn well expected to do that in an AMX50-100 because you could be the team's biggest tank. But you can't do that, because every time you fire 6 shots, you just take yourself out of the battle for anything up to a minute. And this thing doesn't have, going back to the crew performing multiple roles, in all the light and medium tanks, I never get my crew killed. And I believe that crew protection is built into the game for the French light and medium tanks. Can't prove it, but it's just my experience. The crew of my light and medium tanks almost never get killed, because when they do, the consequences are twice as bad as for the tank crews of any other nation, because the French light and medium tank crews do 2 jobs. The AMX50-100 has no such crew protection. I am constantly getting gunner, driver, radio operator and commander killed in this thing, because everything that shoots at it penetrates it and does damage, because you're one of the team's heavy tanks, and if you're not leading the attack, who will? And have a look. Let's have a look at the gunner on this thing. There he is. He's also a loader. Let's have a look at the driver. The driver's just a driver. Let's have a look at the commander. The commander is also a loader. Let's have a look at the radio operator. Oh, and he's also a loader too. So when this thing gets shot at, and one of the crew gets killed, and they will, you have a 75% chance that you're going to lose a loader. And that 48-second reload is suddenly over a minute. And you're one of the team's heavy tanks. Taking yourself out of the battle for 48 seconds at a time when you're reloading normally is bad enough if you're in one of the team's heavy tanks. The second your crew start getting killed, you may as well not bother being there. You're completely useless. And the size of that aiming circle when this thing's moving and the turret's turning is bad enough with a fully live and fit crew, and without, the gun getting knocked out, which it does, and without the ammo rack getting hit, which it does. But if the gunner's dead, you couldn't hit the moon. This gun becomes so inaccurate. It's just, there's just so many flaws. It's just so poorly thought out. It's a heavy tank that can't perform a heavy tank role because it just dies too easily. Its only defense, because it has crap armor and no health, is to keep moving. But if it does keep moving, it can't hit anything and it can't kill anything. It's just such a nightmare of contradictions. And then when it does start taking hits, and it will start taking hits, and the crews start getting knocked out, because they really, really do on this thing, it just renders it even more useless than on an equivalent tank of any other nation, because the crew are all doing multiple jobs. So you lose a radio operator, but you haven't just lost a radio operator, you've lost a loader too. The same with the gunner, the same with the commander. But it's not a bad tank, it's just really frustrating. So my recommendation, if you get this thing, would be you must have an enhanced gun lane drive, because the aiming time is absolutely ridiculous. You must fit a vertical stabilizer, because the only way to keep this thing alive is to keep moving. And if you keep moving, you ain't going to hit anything without a vertical stabilizer. And I would definitely go for improved ventilation as well, just to get the braking speed improved, the acceleration improved, the aiming time, the reload time, everything. Just 5% of all crew skills. This crew was transferred from my AMX-M4, so they all have repair skills, which is fine on the AMX-M4. The second this reaches 100%, that commander, he is going to get Jack of all trades, so that when one of these guys gets killed, he can take over their job, because he needs it. The gunner, he is going to get snapshot to improve accuracy during turret rotation, because moving and turning the turret is the only place you are safe in combat with this thing. The driver, he is going to get smooth ride, accuracy on the move, for all the reasons stated above. And this radio operator, he is definitely going to get safe stowage. In fact, I may even train that skill as soon as that reaches 100%. I may even pay gold just to give him safe stowage and swap repairs for increased ammo rack durability, because this thing gets ammo racked as often as a T44, and that's saying something. So that's the tank. It's just a big mess of contradictions, but it's not a bad tank. And it does lead to the fantastic AMX50 120 and AMX50B, which are both great tanks. They don't seem to have any of the problems that this one does. Their 120mm guns have a 4-shot clip with a very fast reload between them, and it just seems more accurate and more consistent. It's just, there are statistics that don't appear in the garage. It tells you that the accuracy of the gun is 0.36. It doesn't tell you how big the aiming circle of the gun is, though. And it doesn't tell you how much that aiming circle jumps when you move the turret, and it doesn't tell you how much that aiming circle expands when the thing's moving. These are all stats that you don't know from looking at, the Tankopedia and looking at the tech tree. These are all nasty surprises that you discover when you take the thing out on the battlefield. So I'm not going to say avoid the AMX50 100, but it's definitely a tank that you need to learn to live with the limitations of. It is, despite the fact that it's a tier 8 heavy tank, it is very much a support tank. This thing cannot lead attacks, it will just die. It supports other heavy tanks that are leading attacks, and the sooner you get used to that idea, and just imagine you're playing a big, slow Lorraine, you'll have a lot more fun with this. So my first few games on it were incredibly frustrating. And like all of the other French tanks, you're kind of at the mercy of your team. If your team will allow you to play in the support role, you'll probably have a lot of fun with this. If not, you're going to have problems. It's going to be frustrating. But let's have a look at a couple of replays and see how the thing performs in action. So this was my first game in the 5100. And I'm top tier, it's a tier 8 game, so your team is immediately at a disadvantage, because they're down one of their tier 8 heavy tanks, because regardless of what it says on paper, this thing is not a heavy tank. It certainly handles like a heavy tank. It's got that same sense of mass, inertia and momentum when it gets going that you get in an E50, for example. So, I mean, this is my first game. I'm not sure how I should be playing this thing at this point. And look at that reload. God almighty. 48 seconds. It's your team's top tier tank, which is completely useless every other minute. Now look how long, and look how big the aiming circle goes as soon as you move. And look how long it takes to settle down. As soon as you turn the turret, as soon as you move, it's right back to 3 whole seconds of aiming time. Now, I say this again and again and again and again and again. Look how long it takes to aim. I shouldn't take this shot. However, it does actually hit, which is unusual. But now I've crippled myself. I only have 5 shots left. And this thing really, really needs a full clip when it runs into an enemy tank. But I don't think I've been spotted. However, there is no artillery in this game, so this was actually I mean, I couldn't ask for a better first game in this thing. Oh, there goes the Easy 8. Takes forever for this thing to aim.
Enemy armor is destroyed.
3 shots left. Like in all the French tanks, it's decision time. What's down there? Don't know. 3 shots left. Is it going to be enough? Almost certainly not. Should I go for a reload? Well, them's the choices you make. So I'm going for it. I'm heavy tanking it. And I'm hoping these guys behind me are going to support. But, random game. Of course they're not. Look at that aiming circle. It is the size of the moon. Okay, KV-1S. I should be able to kill him in 3 shots. Which is kind of lucky, because that's exactly what I've got. So here we go.
Looks like that one went right through.
And he actually bounced.
Nice shot.
1 shot left. Come on.
Penetration.
He's on 1%. Oh, well, you know. But now that's it. There's all sorts of bad guys over there. And I'm out of ammo. Now, the AMX120 and the AMX50B, that reload speed is, I don't know the exact figure, but it's at least half of the reload on this. You cannot have one of your top tier heavy tanks. If I'd been any other tank, that KV-1S would be dead. The T25/2 hiding around the corner from him would have been dead too. But this thing, 6 shots are gone. Cool your heels for the next minute because there's nothing you can do. Just bounced another shot there, don't know from what. Oh, that IS-3. Okay, now, here we go. First shot penetrates. And I'm trying to shoot into his cheek. And this should be penetrating. And another bounce. And he's going to get another shot into me. 6 shots fired, 5 of them hit, only 2 of them actually did any damage. And once again, we're out of ammo. We're in a very bad position. That was a spot of luck. I'd have been dead now if I didn't have that KV-1S with me. And luckily, when he shot me, it caused me to swerve and put me in the exact safest position I could hope to be in. But it's that 47-second reload that kills you every time in this thing. Any other tank, I'd have been able to fight back. And this is definitely, if you don't learn from mistakes like this, your games in the AMX50-100 are going to be like this every single time. It's a heavy tank, but it isn't a heavy tank. It is definitely not a heavy tank. You have to play it like a medium, which means that your team's immediately at a disadvantage because they've just lost one of their team's heavy assault tanks. Let's have a look at another one. So this was my second game in the AMX50-100, tier 9 game. Yeah, not a problem. But again, aiming circle the size of the state of California takes half a week to aim and then fails to penetrate. as soon as you start moving, look what happens to that aiming circle.
Got him.
If you want to hit anything with this gun on this tank, you must wait for that aiming circle to be fully shrunk down. And yes, that does mean exposing yourself to fire that you really can't afford to take. And once again, 47-second reload. This Type 59 sees me coming after him and he's probably thinking, oh, it's okay, I've got a heavy coming with me. No, you don't. Not for another 20 seconds. And just watch these shots at this Chaffee. The first one, I don't wait for it to fully aim, so it misses. The second one, watch it go low.
Enemy is hit.
And look how big that aiming circle goes after you fired.
We finished him off.
So while technically you could be squeezing the trigger as soon as the next shot's loaded, there's a good chance it'll miss if you do that. You have to wait for it to fully aim, which kind of negates the advantage of having an autoloader in the first place. 2 shots left, target 2 shooting at me. So I'm going to use these shots to try to rattle him, make him back off. It works.
Penetration.
Wow, that one actually hit. Might have killed his commander. This lets me get in a cover. But there's still 4 artillery on the enemy team and I ain't feeling too confident. But he's backed off and I need to keep moving. Again, have to reload. And that Panther 2 is probably thinking, we're okay. I have a heavy tank with me. Not for another 20 seconds, you don't. The amount that aiming circle deviates the second you start moving or turning the turret is the biggest problem on this thing. Right, now we can finally support that Panther 2.
Enemy armor is damaged. They're knocked out.
And unfortunately, I screw up here. By the way, our team are busy yelling at us to cap quick before they do. This is an assault map. Yeah, I didn't see that GW Panther.
We're done for. Arrows,
And
get out.
2 of them hit me. And yeah, there we go. So I'm not doing badly in the AMX50 100. To be fair, when these replays were recorded, it was my worst losing streak in living memory. Regardless of what tank I played, I just lost every game. I think I played 23 games yesterday and lost 18 of them. So bear that in mind when you're watching these replays. That it's not really a fair representation. Although, I mean, I got 3 kills, and I'm still not playing the tank very well. I'm still trying to play it like a heavy when it really isn't, and at the same time kind of trying to play it like a Lorraine when it really isn't. This tank's got a style of its own. But anyway, moving on. So I'm still trying to get grips with this thing, and I really don't think I've got a handle on it yet. This is my 3rd game, so I've decided that, okay, this time I'll go with the mediums, because I'm sure the mediums would like to have a heavy with them, especially one that can keep up with them. And we'll see how that works out. But I still make the mistake of trying to play this thing like a heavy tank. And I'll show you what I mean. So there's a T-54 up there. There's also an AMX1390 up there too, I think. And this is why you cannot play this thing like a heavy tank. And I learned this one the hard way in this game. In Clan Wars, if anybody's dumb enough to use a tier 8 in Clan Wars, then maybe you could. But here I go. Come on, guys. Support me.
Armor tracks is damaged.
Guys, where are you?
Enemy armor is damaged.
Hello, folks. little help here, please.
That's gotta hurt. They killed our driver.
Team?
We're covering his position.
Yeah,
We're dead for.
yeah,
Everyone
you guys just pop out, take one shot and then run away. I'll take... Oh, wait, I can't take all the hits because I only have 90mm of armour. And that is why you cannot play this thing as a heavy tank. It's as simple as that. You try to play this thing as a heavy tank without being supported adequately and you just die in seconds. As I did there. And this was where I learnt the lesson. Which I should have already known. 2 lessons. 1, never rely on your team to support you when you do something brave. Because they won't. And 2, this thing really is not a heavy tank. It cannot act like a heavy tank because it has low health and absolutely shit armour. And if you try to play it like a heavy, this will happen to you time and time and time again. This one ended up being... it was a fun game. And I think at this stage I'm finally getting a handle on how to play this really frustrating tank. And if you want to avoid a lot of frustration, you should probably do the same. Well, that's not strictly true. I mean, you know, if you're playing this thing and you're doing well in it, you know, keep doing what you're doing. But in my experience, it's been... oof. I mean, it is a hard tank to love. It's not a heavy. It's not really a medium either. It's kind of a hybrid of the two. And you shouldn't really play it. Certainly shouldn't play it as a heavy. That's just doomed to failure. Down that road lies frustration and rage quit. But it's not a medium either. It's just too easy to hit. It's too juicy a target. I certainly destroy these things every time I come across them because they're just so easy to kill. But if you play it, I think one of 2 ways. If you can wolf pack up with the mediums and work with them, it's not always something that's guaranteed to happen in a random game, but you know, see how your teammates react and decide whether or not you can get away with that, then you can get some success with this thing. Oh, hello. On the other hand, and yet, that was a bounce from a 361H. And another bounce. That one wasn't.
That's gotta hurt. Whoever tracks his damage. Looks like that one went right through. Penetration.
Well. I've taken 5 hits so far. And all down to angling. 3 of them have bounced, which ain't bad. That's certainly not something you count on when you're driving a Lorraine. So, where were we? Yeah. If you can wolf pack up in this thing with other tanks that can match your speed and support them, then yeah, you can get some good results in this thing. That tactic, however, does rely on your team being any good, or the tanks that you've wolf packed up with at least. Wolf packing up with another French tank with an autoloader, not such a fantastic idea, because you both have the same limitations. However, you know, that Lorraine over there was all that we had, so that's unfortunately what we had to go with. Failing that, if you were to play this tank as a support tank, and
We didn't even scratch them. The radio man is dead.
5 shots, come on.
Range is reduced.
Hopefully that Lorraine has
We
reloaded.
nailed them fast. We didn't penetrate their
I'm trying to
armor.
angle my hull here,
Looks like that one went right through.
but it ain't good enough. And the Lorraine finishes him off. I'm trying to, because I know the Lorraine's got about the same reload speed as I have, and I know he's got exactly the same gun as I have. So we're trying to kind of double team here, where the Lorraine will go in and make a kill, and then I will go forward and make a kill while the Lorraine's reloading, and so on and so on. Now I have 8 health. This KV1, anything can kill me in one shot, but the Lorraine's going for it, which has distracted the KV1S, which means I can kill him. 1 shot left. There's their artillery. It's just a little bit of teamwork here with another tank, and this is how you need to play this thing. You have to find another tank that you can trust and team up with him. In platoons, I really do think this tank is going to be fantastic. In random matches, I think this is one of the worst tanks in the game. Because to be successful, you cannot go anywhere alone. It's kind of like, well, all the other French tanks so far. And in order to make things work, you either need to team up with something else that can match your speed, like any of the tier 8 or 9 mediums. I mean, a Lorraine would work. A Batchat probably... Well, a Batchat might work as well. But then you've got to time your reloads with each other. Preferably a non-French fast medium, or 2. And if you work with them, you can do quite well. Failing that, forget that you're a heavy tank, and basically support your heavy tanks. And this tank is going to be quite good at that. But I really do think where this thing is going to shine is if you manage to, well, if you platoon up with it. You get a platoon mate who complements the characteristics of this tank in whatever tank he's driving. You get yourself on TeamSpeak or Ventrilo or Mumble or whatever, and you talk to each other, because in a well-coordinated group, this thing can kick some ass. How did we do here? 2 kills. That Lorraine got 5 kills, but you know, it's one of those things. Myself and that Lorraine stuck together, and yeah, he got 5 kills, I only got 2, but I enabled those kills, and he enabled my kills. That was 7 kills between the 2 of us. We worked together on them. How did we do? Yeah, not too bad. This is probably my best game so far. I actually took 8 hits. Which is unheard of in a French tank. It left me on 8 health, but only 4 of those hits actually did any damage. Some of it was luck, some of it was proper angling of your hull, but it is doable. It's just as fragile as the other French light and medium tanks, but it does have a reasonable health pool. I mean, let's not fool ourselves. 1400 health isn't a lot, not at tier 8. As I said earlier, you know, you can get 2-shot killed by an ISU, an Object 704, a T30. They will eat you up in 2 hits. You could potentially be one-shotted by a Jagdpanzer E100, and you will be one-shotted by artillery. So you cannot put yourself into the position where you're going to be taking those sort of hits, and that means you cannot play this thing like a heavy tank. It just is not going to work. But if you can get yourself in a platoon with somebody you trust and work together with them, that's where this thing is good. It's when it's working in close coordination with other tanks who understand the limitations of your reload and understand that you can't go first and you can't afford to get shot at, then this thing can do really well. So the AMX50-100, I certainly don't regret buying it, but I think I will probably only be playing it in platoons from now on, because the random matchmaker and the random teams, you can't rely on them to back you up at the best of times in any other tank, and if there is a tank in the game that needs backup more than this thing, I haven't played it yet. So that was the AMX50-100. Overall, yeah, I do kind of like it. It is definitely not to everybody's tastes. I wouldn't be surprised to find this was one of the most hated tanks in the game. Uh, if you like the look of what you've seen in the replays, then by all means go ahead and get one. But I also wouldn't be too surprised if most people try to skip through this thing with as much free experience as they can get away with using to get to the AMX50 120, which I have heard, I haven't played it, is a good tank. So that was the replay. I did last quite a while, but I really felt that I couldn't just skip through, and I needed to really do justice to this thing rather than just writing it off. And the final verdict, yeah, it's not bad, but you need to have friends. So, hope you enjoyed the replays and the analysis, and I'll see you on the battlefield. Take care.